Hi, I'm Scott Flowers with Cloud Ninjas. Today we're here to start a new series on the Dell PowerEdge R720 Server. In this video we're going to specifically focus on CPUs. Let's get going. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by to learn a little bit more about the Dell PowerEdge R720 Server. Do us a favor if you find this video useful. Click that like and smash that subscribe. Well, as I said, this will be the first video on the R720 and it's going to be covering CPUs, but if you find this video useful, I think you'll be interested in the series as a whole because we're going to cover memory, drives, NVMe, VMware, Windows operating systems, how to update your iDRAC from Express to Enterprise, plus a whole bunch more. So stick around and hopefully there's something that you can find useful in our videos here. So all right, well, let's get rolling on the CPUs for the R720. There are two CPU sockets inside. It's an LGA2011 socket. That means you take it takes an Intel Xeon E5-2600 V1 and E5-2600 V2. People ask us all the time, like, hey, what CPUs do you recommend? And really, it kind of depends on what application and what your budget is, right? So on the low end, I recommend the E5-2660, E5-2670, and the E5-2680. All these are relatively inexpensive. They're not going to break the bank, and you can get it still good specs overall. All three are 8 cores, and the speeds will range from 2.2 to 2.6 and 2.7. So depending on what you're looking for overall, those are still really good specs that won't, again, break the bank. The next is what I call the value CPUs, and the value CPUs is honestly kind of where we build a lot of our systems because, again, it doesn't break the bank, but you're still going to get even better specs than the low-end ones. So all three of these right here that we're going to go over, the E5-2660 V2, E5-2670 V2, and the E5-2680 V2, they're all 10 core, and the speeds range from 2.2, 2.5, and 2.8. So all those are really relatively inexpensive, and you get good specs. My personal favorite is the E5-2680 V2 because you get the 2.8, so you still get good speed and you get 10 core. So that's one of our personal go-tos when we're building. So next we have the high end, and the high end still is honestly nowadays for the R720 not that bad as far as price, but you got the E5-2690 V2, the E5-2695 V2, and the E5-2697 V2. So these are our three go-tos on the high end. All are great procs. They're going to be more expensive than the value and the low end, but you're going to get better specs overall. So you're going to get 10 core, 12 core, 12 core, and you're going to get speeds of 3.0, 2.4, and 2.7. So at least with the E5-2690, you're getting the extra speed, which is nice, but you get 2 cores less, so it kind of depends on what you want. Some people want the extra speed, so they would actually prefer to just get the 10 core over the 12 core just to get the 3.0. So again, it always depends on what you're looking for. So all right, now that we know a little bit more about the specs, what we recommend, what goes into the server, let's actually take the old one out, upgrade it, and put a new one in, and we'll show you some of the proper steps to do it. We need to clean the CPU, we need to clean the heat sink to make sure that we don't get any thermal grease off our board, and then we need to install ours properly and put thermal grease back on it, and we'll show you kind of step by step some tricks and how to do it properly. Before we do, I'm going to put my ESD gloves on and we'll get going. Alright, so now that I've got my ESD gloves on, we're going to go ahead and take the old CPU out and install the new one. So I wanted to just kind of show you everything that you're going to need here. So we've got our thermal grease. We just get a ton of these big ones just because we go through it so fast. We have our screwdriver, Phillips head, rag to clean the old thermal grease, and then the two CPUs that we're upgrading to. This is actually the one that I told you that's my favorite value, the E5-2680 V2. So that's what we'll be upgrading to. So all right, so we're going to go ahead and put all this to the side, and we're going to open her up. So first things first, just make sure the latch is set to unlock. Pop the top, very much like any Dell server you've been in before. So we'll have a whole video that is a kind of the different chassis video that will kind of highlight all the different parts, but for now we're going to focus on the CPUs. So we're just going to remove the air baffle here, and when we remove the air baffle, it actually says on the air baffle that this is CPU 1 and this is CPU 2. It says it down here on the motherboard as well, which you won't be able to see on camera, but this is CPU 1 and this is CPU 2. I'm going to also go ahead and remove the fans. You don't actually need to do this at home. You'll be able to have access without doing it, but just for the sake of you guys having a little bit better angle and being able to see the CPUs and what I'm doing, this might be a little better shot. So, all right. So we're going to start over here on CPU 2, and it's relatively simple. We're just going to get our screwdriver, and we're just going to unscrew it. And you can feel it kind of releasing tension as it goes up, and eventually you'll get to the point where you get to the top and it kind of springs a little bit, and right now it feels loose. So all right, now we'll go ahead and we'll do the other one over here. Okay, and now the heat sink is officially off. I can feel it kind of moving a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I like to lift it straight up, and I kind of flip it over as quick as I can because I'm always a little bit worried that the old thermal grease is going to cake off or fall down. You just don't want that getting into your motherboard or into your CPU socket or your DIMM slots. So I'm just going to kind of pull it straight up and flip it over. Before we reinstall it, we do need to clean the heat sink for the old thermal grease, and we'll do that as well. So we're just going to take it straight up and flip it right over. So, and honestly, this one isn't too bad. There's not a lot on there. Sometimes there'll be a bunch of old thermal grease that's just caked all over the place. So this one's honestly going to be really easy to do. So we'll just go ahead and clean it right now since this one's pretty simple. We'll toss it to the side until we need it again. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just clean this off right here as well. Sometimes it kind of depends on how old the CPU is. I might just take it and toss it to the side, but again, I don't want the thermal grease getting in other places. So for me, it's just all about protecting the machine and keeping things nice and tidy. So, all right, so the CPU is good to get removed. So this is actually an E5-2600, which was one of the low-end CPUs that we talked about. So we're upgrading from the low-end to the value right now. So you're going to take this latch right here, and you're going to push it down and push it over. So we're just going to push down and over. We're going to take this latch, push it down and over. When you remove this latch right here, you'll see over here it opens up, being able to remove this, and you just push right back down, and this will come straight up. And now you have access to your CPU. Okay. Now, when I actually remove the CPU, I like to grab from the sides right here as opposed to right here. There's just more space to firmly grab the actual sides of it with the way that the socket's designed. And when I do it, I come straight up. And this is where I tell people to be really careful because there are 2011 pins inside, right? And these pins are so fragile. It's the easiest thing right now would be the point where someone could easily damage a motherboard just by being slightly careless and just lifting this up and dragging the corner over. It can just wipe out a row of these pins, and they are not easy to put back in place. And a lot of times it just damages the whole motherboard, which is just a major issue. So one of the things that we always say is just in this point right here, be very careful. So all right, we're going to lift it straight up. And it was relatively simple. And you can see all of our pins are still intact. And I'd actually like to do a close-up just so you can see. We'll scroll in and you can see how many pins there are. They're just very, very fragile. So it's one of the things I always kind of stress the point of, just be really careful right here. So all right, well now we are going to install our E5-2600 V2. So the way that you want to make sure you have it lined up, obviously you could have just looked at the one we pulled out, but let's say you're putting one into an empty socket. There's this gold triangle right here on the corner, and you'll notice it's not on any of the other corners of the CPU. So this gold triangle, and then down here on the motherboard there's the white triangle, and you're matching the two up, okay? And that's how you know which way. If you're worried about, do I go like this or like that, this would be the way, okay? So there's a couple different ways that you can install it. I personally am always a fan of just coming straight down. Again, I'm always worried about the pins. I'm overly stressing the point, but I'm always worried about the pins. Some people, what I've seen, what they'll do is kind of pin this to the side and then kind of come down almost like a hinge. That works as well, and to each their own. But again, I like to just come straight down because I'm more, more nervous about the pins as a whole. So we're going to go ahead and come straight down and just drop it in. So relatively simple, but again, just be careful when you're doing this. This is the point where someone can easily damage the motherboard, damage the pins. Okay. So all right, now we're going to go ahead and put the socket back down. So we're going to come down here and then put the latch down and just make sure that it clips it down. So we need to do this one first. Come to the outside, put it in. come back to this one, and it is officially in. So, all right, now comes the fun, messy part. We get to put on thermal grease. So the thermal grease, you know, some people do more, some people do less. It kind of depends on how much you want to do. So we're just going to do a nice little one in the middle here. And that's really all I'm going to do on this one. Sometimes you can do a lot more, but I'm always, again, a little bit nervous. I just don't want it to be too messy. You do need to have enough so that you're keeping the CPU cool, but I also don't want to have too much that it's, you know, flowing all over the sides and getting everything all messy. So if I want to replace it later, or if I have an issue later, I don't want it to be causing more issues. So, all right, now we're going to put our heatsink back on. We've cleaned the old thermal grease off. So we're just going to line everything up and come straight down. Heatsink itself will kind of smush and help push the thermal grease into on the whole top of the CPU. Some people actually get like a little spreader and do it. Either way will work fine. So now we're just going to go ahead and simply screw this in. You can feel it when you're doing it. It's tightening down to the board. This one's not done. I like to actually kind of zigzag back and forth. So now I'm going to come over here and I'll do this one completely, and then I'll circle back and finish that one off. But you can feel it tightening to the board as you're screwing it in. And right now it's firm stop, and so I will stop. I'll come back over here and we'll finish this one off. And this is nice and secure to the board. So it was really that easy to upgrade it. Again, one of the main things that I want to highlight or point out is you definitely have to be careful with the pins when you're taking the old CPU out and putting the new CPU in. You know, beware of the thermal grease, but in general, it's not a hard process. It's something that you can definitely handle. And if you need any CPUs, or if you need any custom-built servers, we'd love the opportunity to earn your business. Please email us at sales@cloudninjas.com. That's sales@cloudninjas.com. We custom build Dell, HP, Supermicro, you name it. We're out there, we're building it. So give us a chance, and we'd love to work with you. Take care. Thanks for stopping by.